Hey, how's it going? This is Asher Gray with Creative Collective Alliance, and I'm starting a series of little videos that kind of speak to a connection with a higher power or greater power, a greater spiritual perspective. I'm just offering personal stories from my own experience that kind of validate or affirm the presence of some kind of greater creative intelligence. I call it God consciousness. Other people call it God or Jesus or Buddha or Krishna. In conscious creators, if there is no higher power, but one can recognize and distinguish the difference between granting a conscious insight from kind of a creative and conscious part of our mind as opposed to a fearful projection from our unconscious and reactive part of our mind. We basically can distinguish between two different perspectives. And one perspective is reactive in nature, and it supports instinctual fear, which brings on an obsessive need to control. And then there is the type that supports love's expression and honors our own personal connection to truth. And most of us fluctuate between these two perspectives. Now, I have been blessed, for whatever reason, throughout the course of my life. I can be in instinct mode, living on the streets or high on drugs, or where people would think, completely out of it and unable to tap into a spiritual perspective or get into alignment with that power. I have been blessed to, even when I'm in extreme conditions and things are chaotic and I'm homeless, living on the streets, whatever the deal is, I've still been able to tap into that conscious perspective or that greater power pretty consistently. So, and I want to just share a particular story with you. And I'm going to take you back about 10 years to when I had just gotten back from Virginia. I had made an attempt to get sober and was living at my parents' house. And my girlfriend at the time had flown back to Los Angeles, and we were actually making plans to have a baby. She was pregnant with twins, and she had flown back to Los Angeles, and I was still in Virginia, and I was having, I was overwhelmed by the whole situation, and I was afraid, and I had already kind of created a space in my mind where I was not going to be able to show up for that experience. And I went out one night to a bar with some friends that I worked with at a local restaurant, and I made a decision just to get a drink. And I had made the decision that I was just kind of bail on the whole situation somehow. I didn't quite know how that was going to happen, but in my mind, I had reached a decision that I was not going to show up for the opportunity to become a father and to take care of those children with that person. And we can have a different discussion about if that makes me a bad person or a good person or right or wrong. But the bottom line is I just wanted to. It's a very important part of the story, and it's a part of the story that I had totally lost sight of for a very long time. And so what happened was that night I went out and I ended up getting drunk, and from there I ended up finding a person somewhere at someone's house who had some speed, some like really bad methamphetamines from like the backwoods of Virginia. And I ended up doing a big line of that, and then got pretty spun out and stayed out all night and ruined the 3 months of sobriety I had. And I remember walking into my parents' house in the morning. And I remember the feeling of just coming into my mom's house and my stepdad having so much expectation, so much hope that I was going to stay sober and do what they'd done. And they each have 30, 35 years of sobriety. And so she had invested so much. She really wanted this for me. And I remember walking in and really feeling all those expectations weighing on me. And it wasn't even 5 minutes after I got in the door that the phone rang, and it was my girlfriend calling from Los Angeles, and she was calling from the hospital. And during that time period where I had gotten high over the night, she had some kind of complications come in with the pregnancy and was rushed to the hospital or to the emergency room. And they discovered that both of the twins' hearts had stopped beating. And they informed her that they were going to have to do a DNC and to deliver the dead fetuses at a later time. And needless to say, that was a devastating phone call for me, even though I had already decided that I was not going to be able to show up for that experience. That decision I had made prior to getting high had totally eluded me. And what stuck with me throughout all these years was that there was an opportunity on the table, and that since I went out and I got high and I drank and I lost my clean time and I got loaded, that God took that opportunity away from me. He punished me somehow by terminating the pregnancy. And that when I do things like get high, I make my higher power angry, and then my higher power does things to me to punish me for not living up to his expectations. And it wasn't until the last couple of years with all this conscious creator stuff, I've been doing a lot of heavy meditation, and the insight came to me like a ton of bricks one day. And in my meditation, it said, you punish you. You're the one who's punishing you. You're the one who's bearing down on you. You're the one who has little compassion nor tolerance for you, for your ability to be human, to make mistakes, to do all that. In fact, there was never a punishment that came around that time at all. It simply came down to you acknowledging internally and letting God consciousness know that you were unavailable for that experience. You were unavailable for that opportunity which was being presented to you. You weren't going to show up for it. You had decided that, and it was acknowledged within the greater spiritual universe that that was something that was off the table. And at that point, that's why the pregnancy was terminated, because what's the point in having the pregnancy if you're not going to show up for it? Because there's something that's supposed to happen. And mind you, this insight didn't come to me until 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And it was very interesting insight because I now have identical twin 7-year-old daughters, and they were 5 at the time. And in that same meditation, that voice of intuitive truth said, everything that you're going through right now, all the changes and all the shifts and all the healing work and the transformation that's happening within you is happening as a result of you being a very hands-on parent to the best of your ability with these 2 little girls. And that was the same opportunity that was on the table for you 10 years ago. And it had nothing at all to do with you doing something wrong and then being punished. It was you turning away from and shrinking back from an opportunity for growth and expansion. And so I just I felt called to share this story with people because there's a whole bunch of us probably out there. If you're going through something, if there's something that seems like it was taken away from you, there was some tragedy that happened, I challenge you to consider that God really didn't have anything to do with that it's not this punishing God that's taking things away from us. It's a decision that we make in a moment sometimes, and I can only speak from my experience, where I made a decision to shrink back from and turn away from an opportunity, and then that opportunity just dissipated. It disappeared. So That's why in Conscious Creators, the very first, the most fundamental principle is the principle of awareness. Gaining awareness of our thought patterns, gaining awareness of our unconscious patterns of thought and action, the beliefs we support, the decisions we made as little children. All of these things play into this character that we present to the world and this narrative that's ongoing within our minds. And beyond that, in a deeper place, we have this connection to a conscious perspective, to the conscious powers of like intuitive truth and love. And so really the only way to really have conscious awareness, and when we say conscious awareness, we mean we have awareness of the consciousness of our being, and we can see our mind, our human narrative, our human beliefs, our human thought patterns, our character. We can view that character from this spiritual and this conscious perspective, and we can see it objectively, and we can decide which parts of this character really work for us and serve us, and which parts need to be released or surrendered in order to create a space for newness to come in. And in Conscious Creators, we're constantly focusing on trying to create space by releasing what no longer serves us. And me holding on to some notion that God punished me because I couldn't do my recovery perfect didn't serve me. And I was granted the insight that no, you just didn't lean into that opportunity. You turned away from it. So you were relieved from that. So anyway, I hope this is really helpful for people, because we really need to be kind and compassionate and always remember that we're human beings who are doing the best we can. Thank you.